ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends and neighbors, and all peoples. Welcome to episode 6 of The Garden of Ruin. In this piece, we'll explore what makes people stubborn. Have you ever known somebody like that? This people who, or a person who just will die on a mountain to get their way. They will cling to something, and they may even know, or you may even be able to tell being around them or being with them that they know they aren't right, but they just have to get their way, or they have to feel like they win. And these stubborn people with these, very destructive behaviors that stress relationships that are platonic, romantic, or otherwise. And they do often push many people away and due to the behaviors like this. So, being stubborn, from what I've learned, is that people become this way because they have a fear of losing control. They have a fear of the unknown. And this can be shaped by some different factors. And as we've been discussing in this series about neural pathway formation and how experiences during our formative years can lead to these bad seeds getting planted in us that cause poor behaviors as we grow up or as we go through life. And in many cases, someone who is stubborn in their childhood, they either learn that being stubborn made other members of their home or their family compliant to them, and that they could get their way if they were just stubborn and refused to do a lot of things, that they could wait it out long enough, and eventually someone would cave and give them what they wanted. And so in that case, we would think of, someone who's maybe, kind of a naughty kid or something like that, or a bratty child, as a lot of people would call it. And then on the flip side, you can also have people who become stubborn because they've been mistreated so many times that they finally just flip a switch and become stubborn as a way to defend themselves. That it could be the only option they'd have to assert themselves, is that if someone's repeatedly mistreating them, they suddenly just started saying no to everything that came out of that person's mouth. And more in that situation is where we see, in both of those, of course, is where we see neural pathway formation, right? Is that one child learning during their very important years or their very formative years that if they just keep saying no, and they can wait longer than the other person, then they will win. Then they'll get their way, and other people will be compliant to them. And then on the other side, we see someone who is stubborn because they were mistreated, and when they finally said no, or when they finally just said no and stuck to it, then they were finally either left alone or treated with some more respect or listened to. But as that goes on, that neural pathway gets reinforced. And whether they're stubborn because they want their way, or whether they're stubborn because they're afraid of being mistreated again, they often have a great difficulty with relationships because they can't ever make compromises. They can't ever reach a middle ground with other people because the stimulus that they've experienced is one where they're going to be hardwired to move right to a place where they'll become stubborn, that once somebody suggests something that may go against what they believe is a good idea, or may suggest that they make a change or they make a compromise, they'll be reactive to just start saying no and to just hold out. And so when we see that, none of it's okay, is it? It isn't okay that somebody acts that way. And a lot of times, too, the social response would say, like, well, that's very childish of someone to be stubborn. When you think about them as kids, that they may have come from somewhere that lacked discipline, that made them poorly equipped for where they are now. Or they came from somewhere where they were mistreated, and it made them stubborn and hard to move. Change is very inevitable for many of us. And it's never okay that somebody acts stubborn. It's on them to make themselves get better, or to do the work that it takes for them to get better. But when we see it, hopefully we can understand why some people act this way. If we look at our drawing today, we'll see a character on the left that's confused, and they're not sure as to whether what they're approaching or what they're seeing is safe or not, or if it's something that's going to be okay. And on the right, we see a character that's hardened, folding its arms and scowling, looking down, that it would prefer to be rotting away or to be some hardened trunk instead of making any change or any compromise. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next episode.